What's going on YouTube? It's Tej, back again with another video, and today we're talking about 10 fourth-year breakout candidates for the NFL this season. So taking a look back at the 2020 NFL draft class and maybe some names that have been okay and I think could break on the scene as a star-level plus player, or guys who haven't really gotten that chance, and this could be the year where they really break onto the scene and become a household name. So let me hear your fourth-year breakout candidates down below in the comments section, whether it's people I have included on my list or maybe someone I left off that you think is in for a big 2023-24 NFL season. So hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and also check out the link in the description for BetUS and all their great sign-up deals. Obviously, if you're looking into sports betting, that's a great place to get some extra bread to spend on top of what you're willing to deposit. So definitely check out BetUS down below in the description. So we're gonna go position group by position group. Only 10 names for this breakout video because at this point we know a little bit more. The sample size is a little bit more true for a majority of the class. So there's probably a little less surprise quality maybe to a few different names, but there's still a few here. And 10 is still a solid amount of groups. And if all 10 of these players broke out, we'd be looking at the 2020 draft class in a pretty different light. So this is still a solid chunk of names to talk about. And we start with a pretty obvious one in Jordan Love. I mean, he's now getting a chance to finally start. And anytime there's a quarterback in the first round of the same draft class of Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, and Justin Herbert, you're going to be kind of lumped in and compared to those guys. Love hasn't had the same amount of opportunities as those other three, but now he does. And he's stepping into an offense with a good play caller, has a couple of explosive, nice young wide receivers to work with, including one they just drafted in the second round, and Jaden Reed. Really excited about the upside, both with Romeo Doubs as well as Christian Watson. Drafted a couple tight ends in the third round, so great running backs as well. Pretty solid offensive line, especially when it's healthy, when you have David Bakhtiari playing. So there's a lot of things that kind of go into a pretty solid situation for Jordan Love. And you look at this guy who, every time we've seen him, he's gotten just that little bit better, including last year when, it's kind of end of the game. They're down by double digits to the Philadelphia Eagles, but he looked pretty good in that game. I think the Eagles were kind of just content with whatever happens, trying to limit big plays, and then Christian Watson ran away from the defense. So I think that made Love look a little better than what he probably actually is. But that being said, again, every time we've seen him, he's gotten that little bit better. If that trend continues, I think he'll be pretty solid. I don't find myself, we live in such a divisive world where it's either black or it's white, or it's up or it's down. I'm not saying that Jordan Love is going to be, breakout candidate and he's going to be an absolute superstar, but I'm also not somebody who's going to say like he's going to be a bust. And it feels like a lot of people, it's one or the other. I genuinely think he's just going to kind of be middle of the road. There's going to be some big plays. There's going to be some, head scratching decisions. Not quite Jameis Winston level of it, but kind of that up and down, turbulent, heavy type of season inbound for Jordan Love, especially considering first full season as a starter. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, it's going to be a little bumpy, but I think the highs are going to be high and the lows are going to be low, basically. So I tend to find myself kind of in a weird spot considering I'm in the middle ground here in Jordan Love, but that being said, it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever with a good supporting cast, good offensive line, and now like the organization buying in, that he does go above and beyond where I'm thinking he's going to be. And look, I liked him a ton coming out of Utah State, and everyone kind of agreed, yeah, he's a high upside play, back end first round, second round guy. He comes with a lot of potential. It just comes down to what does that floor look like. So again, kind of going back to the boom bust argument, even when he was a draft prospect, and I was a little bit more so to believe that there's some boom there. So I am optimistic about Jordan Love for the most part. I don't think he'll become like a top 5 quarterback or anything like that, but I could totally see a world where he is better than people think, and the Packers get in the playoffs because of it. And he's got a good supporting cast around him, so definitely a year where Jordan Love could break onto the scene. And then we skip past wide receivers and running backs. Again, the sample size is a little more true for these guys, so there's not a whole lot of names that really jumped off the page. So then we go to the offensive line. Damien Lewis has been pretty solid through the previous years in Seattle, and now just has an opportunity to kind of take that next step forward. Year over year, his PFF grade's gotten a little bit better and a little bit better, so I could see where this is the season with, they add another running back in the mix, year 2 Geno Smith, another pass catcher. I could see that offense as a whole just becoming better because of that little bit more spotlight across the entire offensive line, the second year tackles, plus Damien Lewis, plus a rookie in Olusegun Oluwatimi at center, and Phil Haynes there at right guard too. So I like Lewis more than I like Haynes, and obviously he more so falls into the category of a fourth-year breakout candidate. So I could see this being the year where Damien Lewis goes from, slightly above average to a reliable plus level starter, and because the Seahawks offense is really good, he gets some appreciation, some love because of it. And then we get to Colton McKivit, and this is totally me going on a limb. He is a breakout candidate, and that's where I have to preface candidate, because I'm not entirely buying into it. I'm not entirely sure, why San Francisco didn't address right tackle after losing Mike McGlinchey. Maybe it's just because they didn't have a fit in free agency after McGlinchey went elsewhere, went to Denver to be exact, or because there wasn't a draft prospect on the board that they really liked. They drafted kicker instead in the top 100. So, you can't always look at needs because they may have looked at tackles where once they got on the clock in the NFL draft and said, hey, none of these guys are really what we're looking for. We don't think any of these guys are going to be good. So therefore, you can't really fault them for not drafting someone they don't think would be good. So it comes out of their board, what they saw in free agency. And who knows, we may get to, free agency or the end of training camp, and we kind of get to that third wave of free agency where teams are cutting some older players that aren't going to make the 53-man. And maybe San Francisco is looking to scoop somebody up then. Totally plausible. Now, the flip side of that, and maybe the reason maybe you buy into him as a breakout candidate as San Francisco didn't go out there and try to find a replacement in free agency or via the draft. Maybe they thought there were okay players, but McKivit's was better. That's certainly a possibility as well. But day 3 prospect, day 3 selection, haven't gotten to see him at the NFL level. So to me, it's a huge unknown quantity. So I'm not entirely sold that this is going to work out, but if you buy into the fact San Francisco hasn't replaced him for a good reason, he certainly qualifies as a breakout candidate. All right, next one to talk about is Mekhi Becton, former first-round pick. And Becton's one of those guys where the talent hasn't been the issue, right? Like, I don't think anybody's looked at Mekhi Becton's film when he's on the field and said, yeah, he just needs to get better. For the most part, it's been pretty solid returns on investment. He just hasn't been on the field that much. So I'm kind of buying in here. If he's going to be a fourth-year breakout candidate, that would mean he's on the field for all 17 games, and he becomes a big part of that Jets offensive line that's trying to keep Aaron Rodgers upright. And, if he stays healthy, it makes Rodgers and that offense as a whole better. And that's already an offense that's going to have a lot of spotlight on it because of Aaron Rodgers, because they're in the Big Apple, and because they could be legit contenders in one of the best divisions in football and therefore Super Bowl contenders. So depending on how the season breaks out, Becton's healthy, that offense lives up to expectations. People are going to be like, hey, now that he's back to 100%, he is truly one of the premier young tackles in the league. You're going to put him in that conversation with Mekhi Bectons and the Rashawn Slaters of the world. So big year for him. Also, this is going to be massive for dictating what type of contract he gets, eventually once we get to that point, whether it's with the Jets or whether it's in free agency. So big year for him to try to increase his value, obviously on the open market or in conversations with the Jets. And again, talent's never been the issue. It's just been his health. So as long as he plays 17 games, I think he'll qualify as a nice breakout candidate. That takes us then into Chase Young, kind of the same conversation, drafted number 2 overall for a reason. This guy was selected over Tua Tagovailoa and Justin Herbert because people thought he would be that legit, including the Washington Commanders, who they needed a quarterback then, instead opted to go Chase Young, which with hindsight, I think we would all agree Justin Herbert's probably the move there. But sticking with Chase Young, and again, same things I talked about Mekhi Becton, this team declined your 5th-year option after drafting you as number 2 overall pick. You don't think that puts a chip on his shoulder? And if you don't think he knows what that means financially, what that could mean for his next contract next offseason, you're foolish. Chase Young knows as much is on the line for him as is for the Commanders and his health and his production, making that defense that much more legit. So I feel like it's almost more of a motivation factor more than it was kind of long-term team building. I feel like Washington's willing to pay the extra 10% if Chase Young is that legit and his contract demands go up a little bit, if it means he balls out and he plays well enough to increase his demands. You know what I'm saying? So I think they're willing to kind of say, hey, franchise tag or 5th-year option rather, it's okay. We'll rather pay it if you're worth it. So motivation for both sides here. And I mean, the dude's a freak talent, right? He was in the conversation coming out of Ohio State to be compared to the Bosas, the Myles Garretts of the world with these high-end, top-tier edge rushers. And at the time, Ohio State was just kind of pushing out these top 5 picks at the edge spot year in and year out, and Chase Young was just kind of the next one in line there. You get to the NFL level, and it's been a little different. In college, felt like he could win with whatever he wanted to win, speed, finesse, his hands, inside, outside moves. Now it feels like he's always kind of going to that inside counter without consistently winning on the outside, so it's a little weird. It feels like tackles kind of have picked up on that. Now that being said, injuries also play a big part in why we haven't seen him become this, guy who emerged as a top 5 edge in the NFL, right? He hasn't been on the field enough to warrant that conversation. He was really good as a rookie. I think solid as a year 2 player, maybe a little underwhelming, and then he gets hurt, misses a lot of time in year 3. So need him to be on the field and kind of need him to get back to that year 1 status and also regain some confidence being able to attack the outside shoulder of tackles like he could in college. If he gets that back, the inside counter becomes that much more lethal, and I think overall as a player, he kind of starts to take steps forward to living up to that number 2 overall pick and the hype of being the next Bosa, the next Myles Garrett, all that sort of stuff. So again, this is not a name that's going to surprise anybody as a 4th-year breakout candidate. The dude has the talent to be a superstar, and he kind of needs it to be if he's going to make a lot of money next offseason. Then we get to Isaiah Simmons, and I'm kind of reiterating a lot of points here. He's been disappointing, but I don't know if it's all been on Isaiah Simmons. They haven't known what position to play him in. The defense around him year in and year out hasn't been all that great. I don't know if Vance Joseph was the guy to kind of figure out that spot, but now I look at Jonathan Gannon, who's assumably going to be taking over the defensive play calling, and look at how he moved around Chauncey Gardner-Johnson last year, and I wonder if he sees the same thing in Isaiah Simmons. Obviously, Buda Baker can do some of that as well, but assuming they are going to honor his trade request, Baker's going to be outside the building, and then that kind of leaves Simmons to play that, versatile, all over the field, lurking, playmaking type of safety where he can play a little nickel, he can play a little strong safety, and just basically you move him all over the field. So I wonder if Isaiah Simmons was something that was kind of a draw to Arizona for Jonathan Gannon, and then off of that, if that is the exact role that Gannon's kind of thinking, or if it's just more traditional safety type of role, or they're going to give it another go at linebacker. It sounds like safety, nickel corner is going to end up being the move. So again, I kind of think that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to Isaiah Simmons, position fit could be there for him. In turn, making him that much more productive of a player. So, Simmons has kind of been this boom-bust prospect, where he's had some games, he's had some moments and flashes where it's like, yes, this is the guy that Arizona drafted number 7 overall. They finally figured out how to use this, this insane, uber-athletic hybrid player. And then there's some games where it's like, was Isaiah Simmons playing today? Like, it always, felt like we haven't heard his name once in the broadcast. We haven't seen him make a single tackle, or, it's just been, kind of off to the side, so to speak. So, obviously, a guy who's had some pretty nice highs, but some games where he's been definitely quiet. And it's going to take Jonathan Gannon, who I think is a smart defensive-minded head coach and a good hire, to try to get the best out of someone like an Isaiah Simmons. Maybe get Cam Thomas take that step forward. If they find a way to kind of work it out with Buda Baker, have him get back to the heights he had in previous years in Arizona. So I'm optimistic, but it may also just take him going elsewhere. So who knows? We may do a 5th-year breakout candidate list, and if he goes elsewhere next free agency period, we'll be talking about Isaiah Simmons all over again. So that takes us into another disappointing first-round pick. Kind of catch you on a trend here, but Jeff Okudah coming out of Ohio State he was the real deal to me. Like, he had the athleticism, had the frame. Looked like a guy who would be more than comfortable playing man coverage. He thrived in that, but I felt like, he's got plenty of game to be able to go play some zone. And then, getting drafted by the Detroit Lions, playing under Aaron Glenn, he's had his chances in, man-press situations. And it just hasn't been great. His rookie year was obviously disappointing, but, I got to say, he was a rookie having to handle Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen twice a year, Devontae Adams twice a year, Allen Robinson was with the Bears that year. He had a pretty daunting task as the number 1 corner on a team, and considering he was a rookie, that's kind of a really hard spot to put him in. And then obviously the Achilles injury isn't great. I think he did start to look a little bit better in year 2. And also the other thing we have to kind of talk about here is he's not in Detroit anymore. He's now in Atlanta Falcons. So having another team kind of buy into you and say, granted, I think he understands, I was dealt for a 5th-round pick. There's not a whole lot of risk on the line, but changing scenery sometimes just is that difference for a player to kind of get him back on track. And again, as a prospect, he really was the complete package. Athleticism, frame, flexibility both in man and zone. And now he gets to go to a spot where he's not the number 1 corner. A.J. Terrell is going to get the hard assignments week in and week out. So he gets a new scenery. He gets a little bit of an easier assignment, and also gets to work with Ryan Nielsen, who, Aaron Glenn's a former New Orleans, DB's coach, and Ryan Nielsen coming over from New Orleans. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. But I'm really intrigued if this ends up being the spot where we see Jeff Okudah kind of turn his career around. Now, will he get to the spot where you look at him and it's like, hey, he was drafted number 3 overall and he's absolutely looking like it? Maybe not. But I think if you were to ask, most casual fans what they think about Jeff Okudah, they would say he's a bum, he's a bozo, what a bust. And I definitely think this could be the year where he kind of turns that rhetoric around, or at least spins it on his head to where it's like, maybe he wasn't the right pick at number 3 overall, but he's a solid player, and he's become a nice addition to that Atlanta defense. And he could play into a part with, oh yeah, they signed Jesse Bates, and oh yeah, they brought in Bud Dupree on like a buy low deal. They made the move for Jeff Okudah as a buy low, kind of a risk-free move. And all of a sudden, all these little moves on top of the big splash move with Bates made this defense really turn a corner and play at a high level that we haven't seen in a long time. So if that rhetoric starts to come to form, Jeff Okudah is going to be kind of seen as one of the pieces that help turn around that Atlanta defense, which in turn I think helps his image a ton and kind of leads him on to being a nice candidate for a fourth-year breakout candidate. So then we get to a handful of safeties. A couple of these guys, I think if you were to ask 100, just kind of casual NFL fans, maybe 50% of them know him. And then the last one, probably a little bit more would. But let's start with Grant Delpit, who I thought was a freak coming out of LSU. Was super high on him coming out of college. And, the NFL returns just haven't really lived up to that. But I think he's an insane athlete with more than enough downhill ability to be, he could play over-the-top free safety, but also be someone you play in the box, let him be a ball hawk, let him read, QB's eyes, or be an impact player and help you try to stop the run, depending on who you're playing that week. So to me, he's this guy who could have this fully well-rounded, skill set, and it just never really came together. And I felt like when it came to the Joe Woods era in Cleveland, there were weeks where that defense looked so embarrassingly bad, and then there's some weeks where it looked like it lived up to the talent on that side of the ball. And now with Jim Schwartz there, I think we're going to get a whole lot more consistency, which I think in turn is going to be really good for Grant Delpit. Also, Jim Schwartz has long had a lot of success being able to generate pressure. Cleveland's defensive line, I think, is better now than it has been over the last 5 years. They finally have some help for, in regards to players that aren't named Myles Garrett, like Za'Darius Smith, Ogbenai Okoronkwo, Alex Wright, plus to take a shot on Isaiah McGuire, Dalvin Tomlinson, Siaki Ike. It just feels like they've really put a lot of emphasis retooling that defensive line to actually give Myles Garrett some help. But in turn, it also makes Denzel Ward's life easier, MJ Emerson, Grant Delpit, Juan Thornhill, all of their jobs a lot easier as well. So I think a change in DC goes a long way. I think bolstering that defensive line makes it that much easier for Grant Delpit. And I'm also just buying into the talent. A lot of these breakout candidates, both second, third, and now fourth years of these videos I've been making, I'm going back and looking at my draft priors, and, kind of like Jeff Okudah, he was an insane prospect. And I love Grant Delpit as a prospect, and I'm going to say that his talent finally sees the light of day this year. So another safety that I loved out of that draft class was Kyle Duggar out of Lenore Rye, which small school. And again, if you were to ask, casual fans, I don't feel like a whole lot of them would know who Kyle Duggar is. And I'm talking like layman fans that watch like the local games and like one of the primetime games. I feel like most middle of the road NFL fans are not watching each and every game like us diehards with Red Zone or whatever are doing. So with that into context, Kyle Duggar, from that standpoint, is very underrated because he has been a very good player for New England. And I can see this being the year, Devin McCourty's not there, so when the Patriots are on those primetime games, they're going to note, hey, Devin McCourty, long time great, he's gone. Kyle Duggar now stepping in those spots. I feel like a lot of that limelight's going to go to him, which tough projection to make, but I do believe that is going to be the case. And also, it feels like, those mainstream fans and even just kind of like your general media coverage for football, ESPN, Fox Sports, all of them, they're about a year behind. When a guy really starts to earn the NFL respect, I feel like media is typically a year behind league respect. And I feel like Kyle Duggar's a guy that you look at his PFF grades and you kind of start to hear how players talk about him and the role he's kind of carved out for himself in New England. You're seeing that respect. And I think this could be the year where the media kind of hops on that bandwagon. And basically I can see where all that amounts to the media kind of buying in as well, and he becomes much more of a household name because really the guy is another do-it-all safety. I think he's really good in coverage. He's great playing downhill. He's a hard hitter, really sure tackler. He's kind of the jack of all trades. So with the departure of Devin McCourty, plus I just think a little bit of time it took because he is a small school guy. He wasn't a first-round pick. I just think it will take a little bit of time before Kyle Duggar really catches on with mainstream fans. I think this could be the season where all that happens. And then the one I think more people would know, partially because Alabama, which maybe you could say the same thing about Grant Delpit at LSU. But I think most people, I feel like Xavier McKinney would be a little bit more widely known. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But another guy that I loved coming out of the NFL draft, not nearly the athlete of a Grant Delpit, or really even a Kyle Duggar for that matter, but just always a guy who's in the right place, right time. Maybe last year was a little bit of a down year. He also missed some time with injuries, but now he's going to year 2 in that Wink Martindale defense, assuming health. Again, talent's not the issue here. So now he'll be comfortable in that defense. Julian Love's gone, so even bigger role for him. He'll be asked to do that much more. Less of it, because for a while there, the Giants had a nice deep rotation of safeties they could use, but now it's kind of Xavier McKinney, and it's kind of his safety room to be the leader of. So I think I buy into the player to be able to do and take that step forward. I think he's a really good leader. And again, not an insane athlete, just kind of right place, right time. And Wink Martindale's defense is going to create a lot of turnovers. I can see where Xavier McKinney is the beneficiary of that. Additionally, they bring in that number 2 corner with Deonte Banks in the first round. Year 2, Kayvon Thibodeau. I could see where all this, the defensive line interior-wise is already pretty stout. I can see that defense as a whole taking a step forward, therefore making it that much easier to kind of buy into the love of Xavier McKinney. Oh, the Giants' defense is legit. A big reason why is Xavier McKinney on top of, Thibodeau and Banks, plus Adoree Jackson, yada, 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 and Wink Martindale, of course, pulling all the strings. So I could see where the Giants have another good year. McKinney gets a lot of that love as well in the spotlight, assuming he is healthy, because he did miss a lot of time last year. But I also just, again, going back to draft buyers, loved him as a prospect. He's proven to be a really good player when he's on the field. So that is going to do it. Those are 10 fourth-year breakout candidates. Let me hear your list down below in the comment section, especially if you think there's someone I left off this list that you think is going to have a huge year for. Let me hear it down below in the comment section, and let me hear you make the case for that player and why they're going to be a breakout candidate this year. So let me hear all your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree with me, down below in the comment section. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and want to see more football content like this. But that's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I am signing off.